Los Angeles, I'm and most Hollywood nights. She goes to California, oh, California.
What you say about Los Angeles?
LA got the people saying.
You're listening to Corner of the Galaxy on cornerofthegalaxy.com. It's time for another episode of Corner of the Galaxy from the Box, the show that gets you behind the scenes of the LA Galaxy and into the minds of soccer reporters and MLS experts. Your hosts for the day are Corner of the Galaxy's Josh Guesman and LA Times soccer reporter Kevin Baxter. Let's start the show.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Corner of the Galaxy from the Box on cornerofthegalaxy.com. I'm your host, Josh Guesman, coming to you on a Monday, March 3rd. The LA Galaxy 2-1 losers up at Vancouver are now taking that very, very long trip down to Costa Rica. They're there. They're ready for a midweek matchup against Herediano. We're going to have those details for you as well. But not only did the Galaxy lose 2-1, but thanks in part, lost another 3 players just this week. The Galaxy now have 5 starters out, 2 longer term. We'll talk about those. And then, of course, some younger players that aren't in there as well. So the injury bug hitting hard and often for the LA Galaxy. To talk about all the fun stuff going on in LA and around the world, it is Mr. Kevin the Panda Baxter. Kev, how you doing, bud?
Better than a lot of those Galaxy starters, apparently.
It is a battle of attrition right now. I don't know. I mean, can we stop and take just a deep breath there and say what MLS team can handle 5 starters being out, including 2 of the 3 designated players? The creativity's not there. The actionable, offense isn't there. The Galaxy have been, it's a little tough to watch right now. Is that fair to say?
My finger still hurts from when I got hit by that ball at Coachella. Does that count? Am I on the injured list?
Yeah, you probably are too. You can't play either. Me neither.
Well, here's the thing, we'll talk about the starters that are missing, but with the roster changes that were necessary because of the financial situation over the winter, that means the guys coming in, we no longer have a Brugman or a Mark Delgado or someone like that stepping off the bench, a guy who's used to the system, has played in the system. The guys that are coming in are people like Winder. He's coming off the bench and he's trying to fit into the system. Christian Ramirez still hasn't really fit into the system yet. That makes it much more difficult because not only are you replacing, quality players and trying to live up to that, but you're trying to learn the system at the same time.
You're not wrong. You're trying to learn the system. There is not a lot of system, and even some of the guys the Galaxy brought in to sort of help. Talked about Winder. We could talk about Sanabria as well. There's not much of a system there for them to sort of fit into right now, just with everything that's missing. Galaxy are in a heap of hurt right now, and it's mostly due to injuries. I have to imagine if Joseph Paintsel is back, if Ricky, we won't even talk. Let's not talk about Ricky Push. We can talk about him in terms of he's missing, but in terms of the Galaxy knew he was missing, so that's on them. If they didn't have a replacement for him, which it's hard to replace a designated player with somebody else, but even the replacement, quote unquote, with Sanabria they brought in is now injured. But they knew Ricky Puig wasn't going to be there. So
you and I had a fight about this afternoon. I'm sure we'll talk about it more. You were talking about how the Paintsel injury has affected the team, and definitely it's been a big impact on the team. But the one thing I will say about Ricky before we dismiss him entirely is Ricky's a unicorn. That you can't replace him. There's no one else like him in the league. You can talk about Messi and all these other great players. There are great players that mean a lot to their team, yes. But Ricky is, I think he's the most irreplaceable player probably in the league. The Galaxy are just a different team without him. There's things that he can do that no one else can do, and the team rallies around him. Yes, I know he missed 3 games last year, and I think the Galaxy won 2 of them. But that doesn't forgive and they won the MLS championship without him. He didn't play in that game. But having said all that, I still think Ricky is the most irreplaceable player in the league. And to say that the Galaxy are going to be the same without him and just stick Sanabria in there who can't play now, No. Ricky is the most irreplaceable player in the league. And yes, you knew that they were going to be without him, but I'm not going to sit here at this point, 2 games into the season, and second guess Will Kuntz. What happened with the roster was a math problem, not a soccer problem. The players that he moved, I think he did the best job that he could. Maybe you could argue he could have bought in another replacement for Ricky. But again, if he's the irreplaceable player, how are you going to replace him? So, 2 games into the season, yes, they've looked terrible, and there are some obvious needs, but at this point, I'm not going to criticize the guy that brought the team an MLS Cup by saying he should have done other moves. He was really hamstrung. There was very little that he could do to get the team under the salary cap.
Well, and the
it's
other
hard
thing,
to second guess what he did do.
the other thing is that I think everybody's okay with this trade is that you go all in to win an MLS Cup, knowing you're going to have to dismantle some pieces and that next season, but you win an MLS Cup. I think everybody would take dismantling a team the next season if it meant winning an MLS Cup. Again, the Galaxy sort of peaked at the end of this window for them. They would have, I think, done better in 2023 had there not been a whole bunch of injuries. And now here we are back in the injury bug again. But, boycott and everything else that sort of led up to 2023 caused them a lot of problems. And I think they should have been a better team in 2023. The fact that they were the team they were in 2024 with the depth that they had was outstanding, but that depth is gone. And even if that depth was there, because technically you could look at Sanabria and say, he's a little bit of a depth piece whenever you're thinking about, Ricky Puig being there and Marco Reus being there, and Cerrillo being there and how they're trying to figure those things out. But, that was going to take some time. So again, 2 games in, not worried.
Last time they were 0-2? Last time they started
2017.
That was not a good year.
2017. In fact, they've only done this, and I actually have the stats on it. They've only done this. This is the 4th time in franchise history that they've started 0-2. They did it once in 2017. They did it in 2001, and they did it in 1997. The last time that they were 0-2 after the first 2 games. So, not a great season. Well, I mean, it's usually not. Here is the one thing I will say is that fortunately, 9 teams make the playoffs. Fortunately for the LA Galaxy, they're going to have some time to get some guys back as this all goes out. Now, that's going to be after CONCACAF Champions Cup, right? So, depending on how long they go and whether or not they can keep that up. But it's going to take them a while to get some things back. And I think we know that it's going to take them a while to get things back.
Yeah, I mean, MLS is the most forgiving league in the U.S. in terms of how many teams make the playoffs. 9 out of 15 now? 9 out of 15 in each conference make the playoffs. More than half the teams make the playoffs. So when the Galaxy get in, presumably everybody will be healthy by then, and Ricky will be back. The Galaxy could be a very dangerous team for a couple of reasons. Because Ricky will be back, they'll be good, but also because all those guys will be rested. The teams they're playing against, their key players will have gone through 34 games of being beaten up and pushed around and played in the heat and humidity. Of Texas in the summer and all that kind of stuff. And the Galaxy are not going to have those issues. So, they're not going to win the Supporters Shield this year. They're not going to compete for a conference championship. I'll just say that right now. I know it's only 2 games into the season, but there's just too many obstacles for them to overcome. Will they make the playoffs? Yeah, I think they make the playoffs. And then when they do, I think they immediately become very, very dangerous. We're going to see the other benefit of this, if you want to look for the silver lining, and maybe we don't at this point, but I'm going to do it anyways. A guy like Elijah Winder, who might not got a lot of playing time, is now going to be playing some key minutes. And so when these guys come back healthy, when Sanabria comes back, when Ricky comes back, that'll be way down the road. But some of these guys that are going to get to play now are going to get to play key minutes, important minutes. And when they're called on to come off the bench in a playoff game or something, they're going to be experienced and they're going to be ready to go. I think that's something that maybe wouldn't have happened otherwise.
Yeah, the LA Galaxy on their epic 7,200-mile journey all the way up to Vancouver to Costa Rica. As a matter of fact, I think if I can find it here, and let's see if we can move some things around, because I know I popped this particular screenshot open. Here it is. Nope, not that one. So anyway, it was that they had to travel all the way down, about a 7.5-hour flight down to Costa Rica. We've sort of looked at that and seen that and what it means. They're down in Costa Rica right now. They'll play on Wednesday. There's actually a press conference tomorrow where we should be able to talk to Greg Vanney, I think around 12:30, if that's correct. So we'll see if we can hop in there and talk to Greg about everything that's going on, but certainly ahead of the game, always about injuries and everything else that's going on. But let's focus a little bit on the Vancouver game, because up on the turf, and that turf once again came into play. up on the turf in Vancouver. The LA Galaxy go up there with a 2-1 loss. Now, the big deal, I think, in all that is that I actually, for the first time maybe this season, Kevin, saw an actual adjustment played by the LA Galaxy that I think worked out for them. And not only did it work out for them, I thought they actually looked dangerous there for almost about 25 or 30 minutes in that second half. It was, of course, a reaction after Vancouver had scored in the third minute. Vancouver scores in the third minute. Now, 2 games in a row, the LA Galaxy have scored second in their matches, and we know that the LA Galaxy's record whenever they score second is not as good as whenever they score first.
Well,
so
actually, they didn't score second against San Diego. They scored all.
Yeah, well, that is correct. Yeah. How about they allowed the first goal?
Conceded the first goal. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you.
But in this particular case, seeing the defense tore open pretty early on, some winder rotations. Zonka had to come in here, and this is where it all starts. Really, go to the starting lineup. Micovic back there at number 1. People are starting to ask questions about him. We'll touch on that. Garces on the right side, Yoshida in the middle, Zonka in the middle, and then John Nelson on the left side. The reason that Garces was on the right side, Miki Yamane, with I think what is a hamstring issue, happened before the trip, and so they did not take Miki Yamane on the trip. He's not going up to Vancouver. He's not with them in Costa Rica, and so he has to rehab that and go. And basically, it was the last training before they left for Vancouver. Greg Vanney said he was doing his normal, last things in training where you do some full sprints at the end of training just to sort of get everything set for the match day -2 training program, as they call it. And he felt something, twinge. And so they said, we're shutting it down and we're not going to take you on the trip. We want you to wait. So that added Miki Yamane to the injured list. We already talked about the fact that Ricky Puig is on the injured list, Joseph Paintsil, Mauricio Cuevas, Nascimento is on the injured list as well. So there were 4 players, and then you added Yamane, who was now 5 players. And so you go into that game without Yamane. The bench gets a little bit thinner with Parentes, Valletta, McCarthy, Ramirez, Ruben Ramos Jr. on there, Aude's up there, Harbor Miller, Tucker Lepley, and Marco Reus were your bench options. So still feeling a little bit different. And then the LA Galaxy started midfield with Gabriel Peck and Sanabria and Diego Fagundes, and then Elijah Winder gets his first start as an LA Galaxy player. I believe that was Cerrillo is in there as well, right? And then you had Miguel Berry, who gets the start over Christian Ramirez. I thought that was an interesting little turn on things, but I'll tell you right now that I thought Miguel Berry was way more active than what we've seen from Christian Ramirez, was evolved a little bit. And I thought that the Galaxy did an okay job, especially in that last 20 to 30 minutes of getting Miguel Berry interested in driving to the ball. Ultimately, they created very few chances, but Gabriel Peck was able to put one away that they did get. So you get that sort of late first half goal from Gabriel Peck, 39th minute, just 6 minutes before the end of stoppage time there. And then the Galaxy come into the second half, and I think had it not been for Amiro Garces, who came out at halftime, the Galaxy might have had a good chance of putting something together in the second half. As it was, Aude comes in. They rotated John Nelson over to the right side, so now you have a left back playing on the right side. You had Amiro Garces there, who had a lot of speed and was sort of causing some problems, I think, for Vancouver. He's out of the lineup now. John Nelson is over there. Julian Aude is on the left-hand side. So now you're sort of thinking, okay, but if you're keeping track, that's another one. Amiro Garces goes down, so now you're at 6 players who are injured. And then you have Sanabria. Sanabria falls in about the 71st, 72nd minute, somewhere in there, inside the box, and Greg Vanney says that it looked like he had a fractured collarbone. They're fairly certain that's what it is. And now we have to look at the recovery time for that. So that's more long-term. So that's now 7 injured players.
At one point, they thought he could have broken his leg. I don't know if it was the same challenge, but there was a challenge that was very dangerous.
It was a different challenge.
They felt like, wow, it's good he didn't break his leg there, and then later he breaks his collarbone.
Yeah, so there was a listen. I think we do have to stop and explain that a little bit too. Drew Fisher was the referee for this match, and it looked like Drew Fisher was still in preseason mode. In fact, it looked like he didn't even show up. And I tried.
What's the last Galaxy game that he did? What happened in that game?
Ricky Puig got injured in that
Really?
game. Yeah. Oh, I know. Everybody's amazed and shocked, right?
On a challenge in which a foul was not called.
Yeah. I mean, but don't just say it. Explain what happened. You had a game where Drew Fisher was totally inconsistent. Players didn't know what fouls were. Yellow cards were handed out for touch fouls. Yellow cards were pocketed and not shown for borderline red cards. it was as confusing. And by the way, for both sides, even the announcers, and I think that was Mark Rogandino and Heath Pierce at questioned what Drew Fisher was doing in this particular game. If you are rating a referee, the most important thing about a referee is that they're consistent and that you know what a foul is and you understand what yellow cards are. Every referee is going to have a different threshold. Well, Fisher's was all over the dang place. You had no idea what he was going to call. You had no idea when he was going to call it. He would call really late fouls. He would let easily discernible fouls go and then call like a touch on a shoulder the next minute. So players were confused. Greg Vanney said he was confused. Actually, Greg Vanney agreed with me. I don't want to get Greg Vanney fined for something that I said, but I said I was confused as to whether or not what fouls were fouls and yellow cards were yellow cards. Vanney said he agreed with me that it was that. He also said that he thinks he gave way too much time and effort into arguing with the referees, trying to figure out what Drew Fisher was doing. But I mean, Diego Fagundes basically came in after the game and said, I can't talk about it because I don't want to get fined. If Greg wants to get fined, that's fine. He can do that. But he goes that, basically he was saying it was ridiculous. So the whole deal, all of it was summed up by this tackle. And this happens in the second half. And there's a Vancouver player who goes up over the ball. And then with studs fully showing, and in the freeze frame that I'm showing here, you can see it, studs fully showing slightly above the ankle to show you how high the tackle is. So you're talking about high ankle. Goes completely through Lucas Sanabria's right ankle. There was no foul called. There was no yellow card. There was no red card, because this is a red card foul offense. That's clearly a red card offense. Greg Vanney was told that whenever he asked about it, he said, well, he got the ball first. That's not how that works. And pro referees needs to come out. They said that they wanted to be open and transparent about stuff. Well, this is the first gigantic stinker that they have laid this year, and it happens on this field. It is obvious that this was a foul, but not only that, it's obvious that it was a red card, and VAR must have been sleeping or watching a new Netflix show or something, because this is exactly why VAR was created. Did they not think there was enough force? Because it looked like Sanabria probably broke his ankle there. He stayed down for quite a while on this play, right? And only, by the way, to then go down later, about 20 minutes later in the game, and get in a collision where he broke his collarbone on, defunct turf, really. In Vancouver, there's not much padding there. You're mostly on concrete, and he fell on concrete and snapped his collarbone. Nobody's surprised by this.
About guys like Royce and Beckham before him. These older guys don't go up and play on this turf for exactly that reason. It's like concrete. There's a very thin pad. It's like running for 90 minutes on concrete, and when you go down hard.
Yeah, and he crashed in, and it was, again, Vanney called the footing slippery, and he wasn't making excuses. He just said slippery and unstable, and they think that that's the reason that Garces pulled his, I think, hamstring or calf. I think it was the calf that he said was knotted up at the halftime. Basically, got hard as a rock on the back, and they're like, "Well, you're not playing anymore." So they shut him down. But they said the footing was unstable and tenuous, and then you have the guys go out there and play, and it's just a bad situation. But the fact that Drew Fisher put his stamp on this game, I'm not saying the Galaxy should have won this game. I think the score is probably still a fair representation of the game. But Fisher did not in any way control the game, didn't protect players, and basically created his own problems in this entire game. And that's something that Pro has to explain. I would also like to point out that while I think the pool reporter question system is okay, and I like the changes that they've made, basically making it all electronic and stuff like that, as an away pool reporter, I'm not allowed to ask a question. So I have no way. So I couldn't get in touch with any of the Vancouver people in time. I tried to DM some people and figure some stuff out. Couldn't figure it out. Couldn't get it. So therefore, we don't get a question. But pro referees should come out and say something about this particular challenge. And quite honestly, the disciplinary committee needs to come in and retroactively suspend the player who did it. Not that it will help the LA Galaxy, but if this is called correctly, the LA Galaxy play up a man. And do you think that changes the outcome of the game? It probably does. But more than that, this was about player safety, and they didn't do the job of protecting the players.
Well, two things. First of all, we should explain the pool reporter system. Basically, officials do not have to, players and teams have to meet with the media after the game and answer questions. The referees, the officials do not. So there is a pool reporter system where questions can be submitted in writing to the officials where they have to explain a call or whatever. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they just simply do not do it. They're supposed to do it. But as Josh said, if you're an away reporter, you don't get that ability to ask. So Vancouver won the game. The Vancouver pool reporter probably doesn't really think there's any controversy to ask about, so he doesn't. And so that question doesn't get asked. The second thing is I find interesting is go back to that first challenge on Sanabria where there's no foul called.
Yes.
Okay, so Vancouver believes like, okay, we can thug it up here a little bit if we have to. They're not going to call things. Maybe if this thing gets called here, even a yellow, but probably a red, whatever. If there's a card given here, maybe the second challenge doesn't happen in the way it happened, and maybe Sanabria doesn't break his collarbone. I mean, we'll never know. But if Vancouver is now warned that, hey, this violent play is not going to be allowed to continue, maybe the second challenge doesn't happen.
Yeah, maybe thug it up is the wrong word for that, but I understand.
I don't know. I think it kind of works.
It does in some. They can get real physical. And this game got chippy and tick-tacky just because Drew Fisher lost control of the game. And by the way, that's not a homer view. That's just looking at this the way it is. That was a horribly called game. I have to imagine Vancouver was as frustrated with the officials because they got screwed on a couple of calls. And the argument that oh, well, it was the same way for both teams doesn't fly when you're inconsistent in this way. And that's the part that really, I think makes this an untenable sort of situation. And if referees are going to be that bad, then there has to be some sort of, yardstick. And I'll say this. There's accountability within pro referees. They get rated and ranked on every single thing that happens in every single game. There are assessors. They're going to go back. Drew Fisher's going to have to watch tape on this and explain his calls and explain his actions. And I imagine they're going to go through this and say, Drew, wasn't your best game. And referees are allowed to have bad games. But VAR is supposed to be there to sort of help sort some of this stuff out. And whenever they go radio silent, now there's something wrong. All right. I also think it's interesting. I was listening to referees talk. I think it was from the EPL. Or actually, you know what? I think it might have been on SoccerWise, and they were talking to some MLS referees, and they said the referee goes, the last thing we want to do is have to go to the VAR review because it means that we made a mistake or that, they think we made a mistake. And I sort of get that idea. He goes, we really want to try to get this right whenever we do it. But the bottom line is that I think even Drew Fisher in the state that he was in, if he gets showed that video, he has to agree that that's a red card. That's not a yellow card. They're in no league in the world is that a yellow card. It's a red card. And going back and watching it in real time, you can see it. It does not matter if you get the ball. If your follow through is this, and in fact, in the EPL, they just had a similar play where a guy went for a tackle, but he got all ball on the tackle and then followed through, and his foot hit the ankle, just like what Sanabria did. He got a red card, and it ended up being a penalty kick. All right.
Well, you can't see Drew Fisher here, so I don't know where he is. I think maybe when he goes through that film, what he's going to say is like, this was so obvious. His only excuse would be, I didn't see it, which might be legitimate. Maybe he was in a different position. One thing about that's happened with soccer recently, I'd say in the last 15 to 20 years, we have a guy like Garces, as we know last week, ran the length of the field ran 100, 23 miles an hour.
23.54 miles an hour was his.
Yeah, that's borderline Olympic sprinter type speed. And we have 22 players on the field now doing that. They're bigger, they're faster, they're stronger, and they're smarter. They know how to fool referees. And my point was going to be not to give Drew Fisher any excuse, but the assistant referees are supposed to help a little bit. The fourth official just basically explains things to the benches. You have one guy trying to control 22 people over 100-yard field, 50 yards wide. With the athletes much bigger, stronger, and faster. And there has been talk, I've heard talk before about maybe a 2-referee system, one referee on each side of midfield. That may come to pass soon because you can't have one guy running up and down the field all day long watching 22 world-class sprinters. It's just too hard.
Yeah, you're not wrong. I'll say this though, even if you had 2 referees, and having now been a proponent of VAR and thinking that VAR was going to solve a lot of problems, and I think it does solve some problems. But again, without the initiative to act, then there's no answers for this.
You're right about VAR. You would say the VAR excuse would be like, look, official, as I just said, one official can't do that. Use VAR. I read somewhere the other day, and I don't know if this is true. I didn't look it up, but someone said a regulation NBA court is about the size of the penalty area.
Yeah, I think that's about right.
If that's right, there are 3. The NBA just expanded officials. There are 3. NHL expanded officials. Hockey rink is much smaller than a regulation soccer pitch. So if the NBA can have 3 officials in the penalty area, why can't soccer have 2 officials in a 100-yard long, 50-yard line wide pitch, 75 yards wide actually?
With the ARs and all that stuff, I understand what you're saying. I mean, there's a lot of coverage. There's a lot of things that they're looking at. So again, just looking at that, but looking at the players on the field, I think we can sort of make some observations that are going on. I thought Elijah Winder actually played pretty well outside the first 3 minutes, where that ball sort of comes in behind him. I'm not sure that's his. It could have been Cerrillo. Vanity sort of talked about how the center back got pulled out as well. And so looking at Elijah Winder, what he was able to do, I think the Galaxy in the final 20-25 minutes of that first half actually were able to play through Winder, play through Sanabria a little bit, and play through Cerrillo and get that ball forward. You saw Miguel Berry get a little more active, and you found Gabriel Peck on the right-hand side. Greg Vanny also talked about them getting trapped on the left-hand side so much, especially in the second half. Again, for my money, if you can make it happen without John Nelson having to be a right back at the time, maybe putting in Julian Aude on the left hand side, you can create a little more on that left hand side. And I think that was sort of one, they didn't have any other choice, but 2, putting Aude in that second half on the left hand side, I think the idea was to sort of open things up. The real problem is here basically that the substitutes come in. You bring in Ramirez and Royce in the 71st minute, and then Sanabria has to exit in the 75th. Basically, he went down almost immediately after those guys came in, from what I can remember, and then away he goes. And so now the balance that you were trying to put in there is off. Parente had to come in. You saw Harbor Miller, by the way, making his MLS and LA Galaxy debut. He's an academy product and came in as a second half substitute. Notably, Miller is the 4th youngest player in team history. 17 years, 8 months, 11 days to make their LA Galaxy MLS debut. So Harbor Miller gets some time in this game. I don't think it was the way everybody would have had it drawn up, but Harbor Miller comes out there and plays a little bit there. I thought that Miguel Berry was way more than serviceable in this game, which is something he seems to be coming into this season, Kevin, with a lot of confidence. Miguel Berry probably thinks he in his own mind, he's the best player on the field. And for the LA Galaxy, FOTMOB had him as the best player on the field at 7.2. Gabriel Peck at 7.0 was in there as well, right? So you could see Gabriel Peck doing what he needed to do. He got a yellow card, which was a ridiculous yellow card. Cerrillo got a yellow card, which was a fully earned yellow card, by the way. But there should have been another yellow card directly after that, and I believe it was either Brian White or it was Brian. Gauld? Ryan Gauld, I believe, came in and full-on two-handed push Cerrillo. That is always a yellow card in every game, and somehow that wasn't a yellow card. But Cerrillo was in there. Miguel Berry, I thought, played well for most of the night. That he was in. I still think the LA Galaxy are having trouble sort of figuring out the Sanabria and Cerrillo sort of double pivot that they're trying to play. I think they got Sanabria a little bit outside and a little bit higher up the field, and that helped for a little while. But having said all that, it doesn't matter, Kevin, because any of the progress you made with Lucas Sanabria is now completely gone because he broke his collarbone. I've seen reports sort of saying that and looking at that it's 68 weeks in terms of being out and healing. And trying to get the collarbone ready. But then there's also the whole idea that it's even whenever it's healed, it's probably not fully healed for a lot longer than that. And so you put him into a professional sport where there's contact and you try not to break the collarbone again. So I would expect the Sanabria is going to be out for a considerable amount of time. I think, anywhere between 2 to 4 months is probably completely fine. Somebody even said that sometimes collarbones, because of how difficult they are to sort of stabilize and keep in, can be very hard to heal. And in some cases that could take up to a year. I don't know that that's true. I'm not a doctor. I was reading what people were sending out to me. I've asked ChatGPT. I've gone on the doctor websites to sort of figure that out. I think there's probably a pretty wide range of that. So let's hear what the LA Galaxy have to say about it. And we'll know whenever Sanabria comes back.
Well, I'm not a doctor either, but I did stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night. And I would just say that this is a sport where you say, he doesn't use his collarbone. It's not like football or even baseball where you have to throw or swing a bat. But, you're right. I mean, it is a contact sport. He goes down again, hopefully not on concrete, but he goes down again, breaks it again, and then we're talking about real problems. So I think the Galaxy will be extra cautious with him, especially knowing that September, October, November is when you're going to have your team strong, that if they just make it to the playoffs, they have a chance to do something. And I don't think they're going to rush it because, like you said, I mean, it could be something that lingers for a long time.
Here's the big problem, though, Kevin. We watched the Galaxy now play 180 minutes in the regular season. Their XG in this game was 0.3, so they created very little in terms of offense, and we've seen that now twice. For a team that was one of the highest scoring offenses of all in Major League Soccer, it makes sense because they're missing 2 of their 3 designated players, because they recycled out of Dejan Jovalic, which, by the way, he scored his first goal for Sporting Kansas City on a penalty kick. You want to talk about a guy who's not getting any service. Dejan Jovalic is not getting any service for Kansas City if you've watched a couple of their games.
You're burying the lead there. He scored on a penalty kick. Dejan?
Yeah, I know. He wanted to take it and everything. I was like, oh, that's an interesting one. Let's see. I also wanted to say, Philip, $2 super chat. Is the next MLS game a must win? Yeah, I mean, well, I think we can talk about that here in a little bit. Actually, we were kicking around some stuff. Gilberto. A little $5 super chat. Just got back from Vancouver this morning. My away record so far is 2 draws and 1 defeat. Looking for that first W on the road. And then John says, $5 super chat. Thank goodness COG doesn't have MLS salary cap rules. COG is undefeated in 17 seasons, John. 17. This is our 17th season, but 18 seasons. I'll take it even for an additional one.
We are way under the salary cap. By the way, Gilberto, good choice. Vancouver as a road city.
Yeah.
One of my favorite cities. I know the stadium's not much. I don't think. I don't really like that stadium all that much, but the city is outstanding.
I don't think the Galaxy like it that much either, after all the injuries that...
No, I mean, there are, not to get too deep in the weeds, but there are different ways that the artificial turf fields are constructed. They all involve a concrete base with padding and then the carpet.
Yeah, but
as you said earlier, the Vancouver one is very, very thin.
Yeah.
You can make it as thick or as thin as you want, and I don't know who makes that determination. I guess the company puts it down, but Vancouver is known to be very, very hard.
The crazy thing is that the LA Galaxy will be back on turf whenever they head to Portland. Like, that's coming up in this month. The Galaxy will play another game on turf. Not to mention they're down in Costa Rica playing on a field that I'll just say looks like it might have a questionable surface from the air. Maybe that's unfair. Maybe that's a characterization. Here, I'll for those of you on the YouTube feed, you can look at it. Does it look? Do you think that
it's the green part? The green part of the field.
Looking at it, does it look like the surface possibly could be a question mark? So all part of going to CONCACAF and going down to Costa Rica. Who knows? That grass, Kevin, could be 4 inches long, and the ball won't roll, or that field could not have a blade of grass on it, and it's mostly dirt. Right? You never know whenever it comes to CONCACAF. So.
And that's the thing that, it's mainly talked about with national team stuff. You go down to El Salvador, Honduras, or Jamaica, or wherever, and the fields are sort of different. And, the crowds are different. The officiating is different. CONCACAF is a tough place to play. If you're playing in UEFA Champions League and you go from Liverpool to play in, a team from La Liga, it's going to be a legit stadium, legit field. And this is not a knock on Costa Rica. It's just that, the economics are different in Central America and the Caribbean than they are in the U.S., and there's a wide discrepancy. In Europe, in the top leagues, everything is similar. They're on the same page a little bit, I guess. You just never know what you're going to get in CONCACAF. Is the field going to be bad? What are the locker rooms like? Do they have air conditioning? Do they have hot? Do they have? Is it comfortable? Is it a place that you want to go play in? And a lot of times it's not.
Well, on the Thursday night show, I said that MLS Cup is more important than CONCACAF Champions Cup because nobody ever gets fired for losing a CONCACAF Champions Cup, right? It's the MLS. MLS Cup is the most important thing. It said, well, it's a continental tournament though. It's by definition, it's more, and you can try that, but as you just pointed out, everybody tries to say that CONCACAF Champions Cup is just like UEFA Champions League. And I'm like, it is not even in the same general vicinity. You can call them both tournaments. One is a first-rate tournament. One is a third or fourth-rate tournament. Right? And because of this, because of the field conditions that are completely crazy, because of the crazy travel that happens, because the teams are haphazard at best, and that goes both for MLS teams and any of the other teams. It always seems like there's problems. There's problems with travel. There's problems with fields. There's problems with everything. I mean, up until just a couple nights ago, we thought that Herediano was going to play at Estadio Nacional. And I don't even think this particular stadium, which, by the way, I must tell you, to Estadio Jose Rafael Felo Mesa Ivankovic Stadium is the name. Is that stadium?
They call it the Vitch. It's called the Vitch.
I think it's called. What did they say? They call it the fellow or something like that. That's why it's in parentheses, or excuse me, quotation marks. But that I don't believe that's Herediano's. Somebody fact check this, because I was looking it up earlier. But where's Herediano's? I looked it up and they said that their stadium was temporarily closed, which is why I thought it was going to be played at Estadio Nacional. And so, like, that's the other thing. It's just sometimes these tournaments are weird. But to say, somebody said, well, you can go to the Club World Cup if you win this tournament. Yeah, you can go to the Club World Cup apparently if you win the Supporter Shield in Major League Soccer too.
If you have Messi on you have to have Messi.
Yeah, obviously, right?
But the point you're trying to make is that this schedule is so front loaded. You want to win every game you play. No player, no coach is going to say we went in there trying not to win. But you're right. Some wins are bigger than other wins. And let's just say the Galaxy win this series. Let's say they beat Herediano in advance. They've already got 7 games, I think, right in March. And the schedule is so front loaded. There'd be 2 more in April. Are they going to win the cup? Probably not. Are they going to advance to the final? Probably not. So each one of these games that they add to their schedule, the schedule's going to pile up. They're going to be playing 42, 45, 48 games by the time they get to MLS Cup, if they get that far. Is the cost worth it? I think there is a cost benefit analysis, and no, they don't want to lose. They don't want to lose to a team from Costa Rica. They want to win, and there's a lot of pride on the line. But by the same token, if they don't beat Herediano, if they do go out in the round of 16, is it the end of the world? In some ways, it might actually be a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, right now, I think you want to play as little games as possible while you don't have any players, while you're missing 7. But I'll also say that I think that the Galaxy, you and I were sort of talking about vibes, right? I mean, that's ultimately what it came down to. Was so you're like, they really kind of need to win this game. Diego Fagundes says, now it feels like this game is a must. Like, it's not just, it would be nice to take some points from Herediano. It's a must, right? And so almost saying that it's a must win. And I don't think he's getting to that point. But I think the idea is that, and Kevin, I sort of said, do you need a moral victory in some of this stuff? And I think you pointed out, I think it was actually a pretty good argument. It's like, they've been working so hard. And these teams have in both of these games, San Diego game and in the Vancouver game, have had to work ridiculously hard because they are not fluid. They are not easy to pass between themselves. Nothing is coming easier for them, which means the brain has to think more. The body has to run harder. You're in constant sort of, am I going in the right place? Am I in the right thing? And it makes everything harder. When you start winning games and you start feeling that fluidity, things are easier, right? And it's easier to run with the ball than it is without the ball. Looking at all those things, do the Galaxy need that vibe check coming up on Wednesday night? Do they need those vibes to sort of be like, hey, we're okay. This isn't the end of the world. Yes, we have 7 players missing. Yes, 5 starters. Yes, 2 designated players aren't here. But we're okay. We can still come together and win a game. And so do they need that vibe check? And I think your argument is yes.
Yeah, well, I'm just going to argue against the point I just made, which is, the Galaxy have not played in the CONCACAF tournament in over a decade. So it takes on a little bit of added importance now, I think, in that they do want to do well. Although, again, if they fall in the round of 16, it's not the end of the world, and you can actually look and see there might be some benefit there. But I do think that the Galaxy need to feel good about themselves. I'm a real big believer in the mental part of the game, whatever game you're playing. And as I said, they are working hard. They've got a lot of bad luck, all these injuries. They need to feel that they're going in the right direction. That would mean a win, but it could also mean playing very, very well in a game they don't win. I mean, they lost to San Diego. It was not a good performance. They weren't really in that game, I don't think. I mean, San Diego pretty much controlled it.
They were in that game.
And they lost.
They were in that game. That game was 0-0 until they made a mistake.
But they did not play
well. I give you that.
And then they go to Vancouver. Not only do they not play well, they lose that game, and then they get all these injuries. So they're not feeling good. That, as you said, a vibe check. They're not feeling good. And even Fagundes said after the game, he said, it's tough right now. I don't even have words to describe it.
I know.
There's a lot we can say, but there's a lot we can't say at the same time. I guess he was talking about the officiating
there. He was, yes.
But he also said that now it's time. We need everyone to step up. And this is evidence of how it's not really about 11 players. It's about 12, 13. It's about 24, 25 players. So he's talking about, again, we need to, I think his message too is we need to feel positive. We need to feel like we're headed in the right direction. Usually that means a win. But in this case, I think that the Galaxy are in such dire straits after all these injuries and the schedule they're looking at in March that I think they would take an excellent performance in lieu of a win. They'd like to have an excellent performance and win, but they just need to come out of this next game and the St. Louis game that follows it. They need to come out feeling good about themselves.
Yeah, there has to
feel good about themselves right now.
There has to be progress, right? Like it's sort of trust the process, but in that process, you need things that reinforce you're doing things the right way. Otherwise, you can't trust the process, right? And by the way,
the Galaxy consecutive losses for the first time since October of 2023. We haven't even mentioned that yet.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to go to the longest single season losing streaks per year, last year it was 1, right? Never lost 2 games in a row. The LA Galaxy already 2 games in a row in 2025, and they played 2 games. So something to look for there.
Here's another thing Fagundes said that actually goes to what we're talking about. He said, look, I've been on teams that it gets tough when you lose 1, when you lose 2. But this is when a team becomes great, meaning right now. This is when a team becomes great, is when you come together, you stick together no matter the ups and downs. This is what we really need to focus on and make sure that, hey, when things happen, we're going to learn from this. And that's Diego Fagundes, one of the most experienced MLS veterans, talking about basically saying this is a character check.
Guess who requested him after the game?
You did.
That's right. Because I knew we were going to get some gold from Diego. Plus, I wanted him to talk about the referees, and I think he said everything that he needed to say.
Which is nothing. And I understand that 100%. I never want to get guys fined, but these are grown adults, and they can figure out whether or not they want to pay money or not. So that's certainly something there. Adam says, $5 super chat. Hey, guys, do you see all the comments of Micovic getting the blame and calling for McCarthy back in goal? We were talking about Micovic before you and I started the podcast tonight. I don't think we should be surprised. Micovic didn't get to play a lot last year because McCarthy was in goal for a lot of it. So I think some of that is him getting settled. The other side of that is that I don't think there's a lot that separates McCarthy and Micovic. And I would say that if you say that all things being equal, that probably the experience of McCarthy would usually be the direction that you go. I think, however, the LA Galaxy are thinking that they have to develop Micovic, that this is the chance that they sort of get to get him those things. I think he's made some amazing saves in the first couple of games. I think he's done some really good things. I think the story that we're told, and Greg Vanny even said this, I think in preseason, that Micovic is a better distributor of the ball. I think that so far that has been shown to be not true. That doesn't mean it won't be true, because certainly he's getting settled. But I think the LA Galaxy are going to give Micovic some chance here. Now, for CONCACAF Champions Cup, I'm not so sure that John McCarthy doesn't start down in Costa Rica whenever it comes on Wednesday. So I wouldn't be. I just think that perhaps that rotation is set that way. That for some of these other tournaments, it's going to be John McCarthy. So I think you start McCarthy there because I think it's going to be an extremely hostile environment, and he's been around, and I think he is not going to panic. Not that Micovic would, but I think if anyone would, it would be him. When you look at Micovic, look, the first goal against San Diego was on a mistake. It was his mistake. It's a mistake I would argue John McCarthy wouldn't have made, but it was a mistake that led to that goal.
Right.
He didn't play poorly. The second goal, the game opened up. There was nothing he could do on that play.
Correct.
In Vancouver, the first goal in the 3rd minute, you could argue there was a defensive breakdown, put him in a tough position.
Yeah.
And then the second goal, I don't know. I really can't comment on that, but you could make the argument that one of the 4 goals that he allowed was truly his fault.
Well,
no more than one of the 4 goals.
There could be an argument. I certainly saw it being made. I don't know how I feel about it. I've gone back and watched the play, but on that second goal, certainly it was Vancouver who overloaded the box. So there were 3 Vancouver players, 4 Vancouver players for 3 LA Galaxy defenders. And a midfielder needs to come back and check in to make sure that you don't get that overload. And then that ball gets floated over top of Zonka. And I talked to Zonka afterwards, and he said, I need to be in a better position. He goes, trying to learn. I asked him, I said, were you waiting for maybe Novak to come out and get that? Because I think there's a possibility Novak could have come out and claimed that ball. It's easy to second guess that, but if you're going to give Brian White a header from the 6-yard box off of somebody's back shoulder, he's going to score that like 99 times out of 100, probably 100 times out of 100. So you can't allow that to happen. Zonka got beat to his back shoulder, got caught flat-footed and didn't jump, and Micovic looked like he didn't want to come out and do it. Now, it's a really good ball because it's hooking away from Micovic, and that's sort of the idea, is that if you're coming out to get it, can you get there in time? No pressure on the cross as well. So there were a bunch of little breakdowns that happened, but here's the deal, and this is why that is. At no point did I think the LA Galaxy were going to win that game. right? Especially whenever you saw the injuries that happened in the second half with Garces coming out, with Sanabria going down, and the Galaxy sort of having to rotate through with, John Nelson on the right-hand side, bringing in Julian Aude, putting in Parente, Isaiah Parente in there as well. It didn't seem like the Galaxy had the horses to do anything in that second half, and really the Sanabria injury happens right as they were making sort of a push, because they brought in Royce and they brought in Ramirez. So that was the chance to sort of say, hey, maybe we're going to have something here. You're bringing in offense to try to fighten the game a little bit. And I believe they rotated Royce and put him in there because it was on turf and because he's going to have to go down to Costa Rica and all the travel and all that fun stuff. So we can sort of look at that. But, Zonka was sort of saying, you have to know the guys around you. And he goes, I need to do better at that. And, I probably need to put myself in a better position there.
But back to Novak. I mean, I think McCarthy starts in Costa Rica. I think that was probably determined ahead of time. Let's just say he makes 7 saves and he gets a clean sheet.
Mm-hmm.
Now, at least the supporters, there's a quarterback controversy. Who starts in goal?
Oh.
You got to bring Micovic back. He's a young guy. You can't say after 2 games where you played well, you didn't play horribly. It wasn't like everything was your fault. You lost your starting job after 2 games. He would have to come back. You can't do that to a young goalkeeper and a guy who plays a position that's all about confidence and a little bit about swagger.
Yeah.
You got to have his back now.
Yeah, at least for a little while. You have to do it for
you get to the end of March and see he still hasn't won a game and he's still giving up 2 goals a game. Then you can say, look, you had a chance, it didn't work out.
Yeah.
But you can't do it after 2 games.
Yeah, and then
when everyone else has played poorly. If he were playing and the team was running on all cylinders and they were playing great and they just weren't winning, then you could say, yeah, maybe the goalkeeper is the fault. But that's not the case.
No, I agree with that. Tim, by the way, says $2 super chat. Hi guys, what are your thoughts on Royce so far? Talk about Royce coming in at the summer, and then all the way through the start of the season. Marco Reus was brought in, I think, to relieve some of the pressure off of Ricky Puig and to allow it later in games for Ricky Puig to have a good combination with Reus. What you're seeing right now is the same problem that we have been seeing, where the midfield is disconnected from that sort of top line players, and so you're not getting the ball to Royce, so you're not progressing things into areas where he can be dangerous. And the same thing's happening with Christian Ramirez. The same thing happening, quite honestly, with Miguel Berry. It's one of the reasons the LA Galaxy aren't generating offense, is because there is no good connection right now through the middle to find players like Marco Reus. I think people want Marco Reus to be more of a quarterback like Ricky Puig is. And I would say I don't think he's that type of player that you still need to. He likes to stay forward a little bit and sit in those pockets and find them. Ricky was really good at combining with him in those little half spaces in order to get forward and play through the middle. There isn't a player on the field right now, and we were sort of hoping that Sanabria would develop into that. I actually thought Sanabria had an okay game whenever they finally adjusted him, I think, a little further up the field. I'll have to talk to Greg about that eventually, about what that adjustment was. But now it almost doesn't matter because Sanabria is going to be out for X number of months, right? So, that one sort of goes on the wayside. But I don't have a problem with Marco Reus. I know a lot of people are blaming Marco Reus for taking money that Mark Delgado could have had, or taking money that Gaston Brugman could have had, and all these other things. By the way, Brugman has not been showing up for Nashville on even on the bench yet. And so I don't know if he's injured or what that was, but that was another concern I think the Galaxy had, certainly, was that he was older and he was gaining some of those injuries, and that those injuries would limit his production on the field as well. So I don't know that keeping Brugman was a great idea and all that, but I know a lot of people would have loved to, I think, kept Mark Delgado.
And he's played well for LAFC so far.
He has, absolutely. He's played very well. And he's one of those guys who could really help this team right now. I said the one that was going to come back to bite the Galaxy the biggest, Kevin, was going to be Mark Delgado. I always felt that Mark Delgado is such a good player that you knew he was going to be a good player for LAFC in that midfield. And I think right now, if you were looking for somebody who could settle a lot of things, it would be Mark Delgado, and the Galaxy are missing that clearly. So what are your thoughts on Royce so far? He hasn't done a lot, let's be honest, but he was a good combination guy whenever Ricky Puig was in there, and could play on the same level as Ricky Puig. Without somebody with Ricky's talent, I think you're seeing the limitations of Marco Reus.
Well, I mean, go back to Ricky as a unicorn. We talk about there's not been the line-breaking passes. They haven't been able to play the ball up into the midfield. Ricky was good at going back and getting it. He wouldn't wait for it to come to him. But Royce is a different kind of player, like you said. He's not going to go back and get it, and he's not going to dribble through challenges like Ricky did. I mean, Ricky was like sort of an old school football player. He would go right up the gut of the field and go through people, and rather than go around them. Royce is just not that kind of player. And so, yeah, I think the combination of Ricky and Royce is different than Royce alone. I also think Royce was probably brought in a little bit for leadership, a team that looked like it was going to do something without a lot of guys. Diego Fagundes, maybe McCarthy, maybe guys that could provide that veteran MLS style leadership. I think Royce maybe was brought in a little bit for that too. I know that Will's real big on that. I don't really have a feel on whether he provided that. I haven't been around the team that much in on the sidelines or in the locker room, certainly to know, but I don't know. I think he's serviceable. I wouldn't say that he's necessarily $1 million player, which is what his salary says he is.
He's not gonna rescue this team, right? Like that's the whole thing. Yeah, I think, and that's not even fair to say, because I think if you get somebody who can start combining with him in the center, that he's going to be a really valuable piece for the LA Galaxy. But you have to figure out, I mean, Greg Vanney sees it. You see what they were trying to do. You could see how they try to feed him into the center and the spaces that he's getting at. The Galaxy aren't creating offense. They're not creating dangerous chances. Why? Because they have no presence in the middle. They're shuffling everything on the outside, and everything has to go through Gabriel Peck. And that's fine whenever there's an option on the other side. Diego Fagundes isn't as fast as Gabriel Peck. He's just not a threat to get in behind. I thought Fagundes actually played a reasonably good game. Tucking in. It's funny looking at FOTMob and sort of seeing where they look at different guys.
Sevens for Vancouver. Holy cow.
Yeah, I mean, right now what we're seeing is the LA Galaxy aren't very good because the other teams have had all the good numbers, right? The whole deal. But again, Miguel Berry at 7-2. Diego Fagundes at a 6-0. I think that's low. Peck at a 7. You can sort of look at this. Now, here's something. They have Zonka at a 6.4, right? If you go to G+, right, goals plus, so basically is the player's career, let's see, rating is calculated based on goals added, right? G+ is goals added. And so whenever a player is on the field, how many goals do they add, right? It's sort of this ranking of goals added, or it's like the plus minus system in like hockey, I think.
Or war in baseball.
Right, exactly. Something like that, right? So you're looking at goals plus, and they had Zonka as the top rated player as the LA Galaxy, and then you can come over here and look at the LA Galaxy on here, and it has Zonka at a 6.4, right? So it's always interesting to see the different things. I don't think Zonka was the best player on the field for the LA Galaxy, so I tend to believe that the 6.4 is probably a pretty reasonable sort of look at all that. I don't know.
You go back to Royce, though, before we forget about that, and you look at his pedigree and the great teams he played on, German national team, Borussia Dortmund, playing in Champions League and all that kind of stuff. He has a tremendous resume, a tremendous pedigree. But if you go back and look at those teams, there were other great players in that team, which is not taking anything away from Marco Reus. But I guess my point would be is he was not as a Laton type guy who's going to come in and just run roughshod over everybody and everything goes through him. I don't want to say he's a complimentary piece because he's better than that, but he benefited from having great players around him. And I think even as good as Ricky Puig is, you can say the same thing. In 2023, when the Galaxy did not make the playoffs, Ricky had 7 goals, and he was the best player in the field, but the team did not win because he didn't have people around him. Last year, he had his career high in goals and assists, and they went to won the MLS Cup final, albeit without him. But the point being, he's better with good players around him. And I think Marco Reus is the same thing. Maybe it's a little unfair to look and say, is Marco Reus going to save this team? As you said, no, he's not. But when you put some good pieces around him, he's going to be very effective.
Yeah, by the way, I did the chat room always help me out. Sports lover, Herediano plays at Estadio Eladio. Rosabal. Estadio Eladio, Rosabal,
wow,
Cordero.
Awesome. That is awesome.
I don't know if that is ELADIO, Estadio Eladio.
That's awesome.
That's so Estadio Eladio
Sports
Cordero. Basically, it's about 45 minutes outside their main stadium because their main stadium's temporarily closed. So that's why you're getting the trip down to play at Estadio Jose Rafael Fellow Metza Ivankovic.
By the way, that'll be Feo.
Feo? That is true. Feo. F-E-O.
Yeah. So that's another thing that we talk about again with CONCACAF. If you're going to play Barcelona in the Champions League, you're going to go play at their stadium. You're not going to go play in a suburb 45 minutes away. Again, that's welcome to CONCACAF. Fly into San Jose, train in San Jose, and then get on a bus with a lot of traffic, 45 minutes. Yeah, good luck. See you in 3 hours. and then you're going to play there.
Yeah, I'm sure, and I'm sure the hotel will be a nice, quiet place at night, and they'll be doing all the stuff that they normally do to rile teams up. That's CONCACAF. By the way, Adam says, "How do you guys feel of Drew Fisher's officiating?" I think we've already talked about that. And Vanny's substitutions, I feel they could have been made earlier to rest some players. I mean, I don't think so. Not in this particular one. You had, first of all, you had to make a substitution at halftime. At halftime, so Aude came on for Garces. Then you made substitutions in the 71st. I mean, yeah, maybe you could have gone 5 minutes earlier. I just don't think that's that big a deal. But as you were sort of watching the Galaxy try to do some things here, that 71st minute right there is right around where Sanabria goes down. And so then that changes things. So in the 75th, Parente comes in. And then the 87th minute, you have Brian White, who ends up scoring that header on the back post. So the LA Galaxy were 1-1. I said this, and I'll say this again. I don't think the Galaxy were good enough to win that game. I think they were good enough in that game to get a draw. And I think that was the disappointing part, was that although I felt at times that Vancouver was unlucky not to have had more goals in that game. So, you can sort of go back and forth with those and look at those.
I think with those substitutions, you need to know a little bit more about what Vanny's game plan is. Because, again, Royce coming in the 71st minute to play on that turf, obviously I think Vanny's saying you're going to play a lot of minutes in Costa Rica. There's a difference between 20 and 30 minutes. And it sounds, 10 minutes different. But body clock-wise, that's a big difference, especially on that turf. If Marco Reus runs around on that concrete for 30 minutes, maybe he can't play as long in San Jose. Maybe the same for Ramirez. So maybe that's why I don't know if Vanny said, we're going to not try to win this Vancouver game. We're not going to go all in because we're saving guys for San Jose. I don't know if that was the thinking, but I do think that if you decide that Royce and Ramirez are going to play in Costa Rica, holding them off until the 70th minute, giving them another 10 minutes to rest,
right.
10 fewer minutes on that turf is a big deal.
Yeah, I was going to say the turf may have dictated that more than anything, right? I think you were 100% there. Step, by the way, $5 super chat, says, we lost to San Diego like Argentina lost to Saudi Arabia. I mean, listen, I don't think San Diego's as bad as everybody thought they were. They tied 0-0 at home in their home opener, right? So, and really it was a gift by the Galaxy that sort of got them into the game at Dignity Health Sports Park. So they're fine. The Galaxy are struggling. All those things can be, I think, true.
Guess who's in first place, undefeated?
San Diego.
No, well, the Fighting Bruce Arenas.
Oh, San Jose. That's right. I didn't know that. I thought because we were talking about San Diego, you were like, no. San Jose is a dangerous team. I think we sort of expected that, and they have proven correct so far. So Bruce Arena knows how to put together an MLS soccer team. I don't know if you've seen him play coach before, but he's pretty good.
Yeah, I've heard some things about him, but he's been out of the league for a while, so I thought maybe
he lost it, huh?
Yeah.
Nope.
Pretty good assistant coach down there too.
Yeah, he is one of the best man managers in all of soccer, Bruce Arena. Period. Adam, $5 super chat. Do you guys still think Micovic has better distribution than McCarthy? I do not see it so far. No, I mean, we haven't seen it. I think he can still prove that he's there. But yeah, I'm waiting. I refuse to talk about where the LA Galaxy are in standings right now. That's nothing you need to know. That's not that important. All you need to know is the Galaxy play a CONCACAF Champions game coming up on Wednesday. So that's really the important part. Anything to this?
If you're looking for them, start at the bottom.
Yeah, I mean,
in the standings,
not 13th. I think they're in 14th right now. Let's see. The LA Galaxy playing Herediano. That game starts at 5:30. They say that it's on Fox Sports, so we're waiting sort of to figure out exactly which channel that's going to pop up on a Wednesday. But we do expect the game to TV time to start around 5:30 and that game to kick off at 5:37. So we'll all be waiting and watching for that, and I'm sure we'll tweet it out as soon as we have it, and we'll see where that goes. Looking at Herediano and advancing past Salt Lake. I thought this was...
Go back to the stadium for a second.
Yes.
I just noticed something. There is no parking lot, and there doesn't appear to be maybe buses, but there doesn't appear to be like a train liner. How do you get to the stadium? And you have to
you walk? Yeah, you probably walk, or you take bikes, or you could take a taxi or something like that. There's plenty of ways to get to a stadium. This is like a local community field right here. I'm guessing. Let's see. Attendance can't be more than
12, 15,
2,000. 2,500. It's small.
Is that small? Okay.
It is super small, Kevin. I mean, the stands in here, maybe 3,000, maybe. I can't really see what those stands on one of the sidelines sort of look like, but I don't think it's somebody can look in the chat room and sort of do it. I think that looking at what the LA Galaxy need to do down in Costa Rica is sort of that important part of this next step. Looking at what Herediano did whenever they were playing against RSL, in RSL, they didn't want the ball. They didn't hold the ball for very much, and they were still able to come up with a whole bunch of shots and do a whole bunch of things and create some problems. So very much a counterattacking team. Now, whenever you get them home, and they're at home in Costa Rica, I expect that Herediano is going to have a lot more of the ball. I expect that they're going to go and press the LA Galaxy, and I think the LA Galaxy on this are going to be a defense-first team, and I don't think the Galaxy play defense-first a lot, but when you're on the road in CONCACAF, try to get that road draw, try to get that away goal, because that's an important thing to do. And then you come home in the second leg and you try to get it done. This is the away goals rule is still there. It's a tiebreaker. So if you have an away goal, you have technically a tiebreaker over the other one should the score be tied. And then everything's on aggregate scoring. So we can sort of go through that as the Galaxy go. But I think there's going to be the funny thing here is, Kevin, I think we expected that there was going to be like a whole bunch of rotation. Now looking at the LA Galaxy and the rosters that they have. I don't know that there's going to be that much rotation because the Galaxy probably don't have that many players.
They don't have anyone to rotate. By the way, that stadium is 76 years old.
Okay.
Built in 1949.
What's capacity?
13,500.
13,000 people? No, come on.
And it's what it says right here.
Oh,
it's the home stadium for Cartagena's.
Somebody said 8,800. 8,800.
I see here.
8K. Look at it. It looks so small.
Don't you have to trust everything that you read online?
I have no
idea. Wait. Okay, there are two things here. Capacity is 13,500. But then in the notes it said the stadium holds 8,350.
Yeah.
So how can it be it has a capacity of 13,500, but it holds only 8,350. I don't know what that means. The other people have to hover in midair or something. I don't know.
Yes. Yeah,
I would expect it's going to be rocking, even though it's Cartagena's home field and it's 45 minutes from Herediano's home stadium. I would still imagine they're going to have some loud fans in there.
Should we take? Let's get. Do you think that? And this has to be visual because I don't think we can trust any report that we sort of get or that type of thing. Because it's like I wouldn't trust with the MLS reports on attendance most of the time. But like sort of look at, is that stadium going to be like halfway full? I don't even think it's going to be halfway full. I don't think it's even going to be halfway full.
As we talked about, there doesn't, there's no parking lot. Transportation is going to be difficult. I remember covering the game with the U.S. national team, the 2017 game, when they went down and they lost to Trinidad. Remember, and they were eliminated from World Cup competition. They had to move that game out of the capital to a suburb. It was about 45 minutes to an hour from the capital, and I guess people had trouble getting there. Even given the importance of the game, there were maybe a few hundred.
Right.
Probably 1,000 at the most in the stadium for that game for the final World Cup qualifier.
Yep.
So I don't know. Maybe the fact, if Cartagena's fans don't want to come out and cheer for Herediano against the Galaxy, then maybe they don't get a lot of fans. They've already played one game, right? One CONCACAF Cup.
Not here though. Not there.
Yeah, they played in Costa Rica.
Yeah, in Costa Rica. They played at the Estadio Nacional, which is I thought where they would go again, the national stadium, right? I thought that they would possibly go there again, but apparently not. So anyway, the 8831 is sort of what people are saying. By the way, they also say that Dignity Health Sports Park still has a capacity of 27,000, which it hasn't had in years, and they lost another 800 seats over this last renovation, right? So I think we're in the 25 to 26,000. Range there and not much above 26 if it is above 26. So it's like 24, 25 from the calculations that I have on my stuff. Anyway, so you can expect on TV that this is either on FS1, FS2. Here's why I say to be careful with that. I watched some of the CONCACAF Champions Cup games and it got bounced off of FS1 and FS2 like both times I went to watch. Like they had a basketball game that had to continue, and so then they basically kicked the CONCACAF Champions Cup game to like the web for a little bit. So just have some patience here. MLS does not have the rights to these in terms of Apple having them, so you can't find them on MLS Season Pass. And whenever you complain about not being able to find it on MLS Season Pass, that's one of the reasons why I say the MLS Season Pass has been such a success, is because you always know where all the games are. There's no questions. You don't really have to worry about it. But in this particular case, you're going to have to go searching. I've watched it on YouTube TV a couple times, and on YouTube TV, it will actually kick it to the web whenever you can type in the name of the game, and it'll find it for you. But like whenever it gets kicked to the web, you can still watch it on YouTube TV instead of having to get kicked somewhere else.
So let's be fair. We've guessed about the attendance at the stadium in Costa Rica. What are they going to have at Dignity Health Sports Park next week? What do you think? I'm guessing 12, 14 midweek game.
9,500.
Okay.
I remember going to CONCACAF Champions Cup games. There's not a lot of people there. Interesting.
Now the deal with season ticket holders is this is a separate game. You may have the option of adding it to your season ticket package, but you have to act affirmatively to get that, and then you have to pay for it separately.
Yeah, I don't remember. I do not remember. Somebody did say, however, that the stadium tickets to get to the game in Herediano are start at $13, so a good deal if you can get there.
Yeah,
it only costs you about $800 in airfare, and about another couple $100 in lodging in order to get a $13 ticket. I mean, that's basically free whenever you get down there and
when I covered the Florida Panthers back in the day, they used to have Canadian night at the stadium there. People would fly down with a family of 4. They'd come down from Toronto, get a hotel for a couple of nights, buy tickets to the game, pay for the airfare, and it was still cheaper than trying to go to a game in Toronto because all the hockey games were sold out. So, if you can't get Galaxy season tickets, maybe you do want to fly down to San Jose.
Yeah, Aaron, by the way, says that you are correct that it was an add-on for season tickets. So yeah. So that's another reason why it's usually not too high on the attendance thing there. It's not part of the package, and so you have to buy extra tickets and go. So that'll be so fun to watch. I did find this an account that sort of tracks LA Galaxy travel or MLS travel, right? So LA Galaxy travel the 9th furthest in MLS in the Western Conference. Now this is, I believe, is just for league games, but basically the LA Galaxy, in terms of how far they travel and where their longest one is, it's a really cool account, and I implore you to sort of go in that. But that's 9th in the Western Conference. The LA Galaxy travel the 9th furthest in the Western Conference.
Well, who gets hosed the most? Is it Seattle and Vancouver because they have to make those long trips to Texas? Okay, and the Texas teams, do they play each other so many times? I guess
Vancouver, Houston. Right now, it's Vancouver, Houston, St. Louis, Seattle. Oh, sorry. This is just the Galaxy's positioning, right? So 9th and I was looking for it. Like their longest trip is the Vancouver trip. By the way, they took the longest trip, which is to Vancouver. One of their longest ones in the Western Conference whenever they fly there. And then they go and they have to, they went to their longest trip of the year whenever they have to fly down to Costa Rica. So they added the 2 longest legs and all that. Whenever you put that together.
You know what's weird is Vancouver is the longest trip. If you say it's the longest trip that is, you stay in the same time zone. You go to St. Louis, it's 2 different time zones.
Yeah.
It's not the longest trip.
Yeah, it is. It is absolutely. So apparently, according to this, and I haven't checked it out, but Vancouver is the longest trip. Houston is the second longest. St. Louis, this is for the LA Galaxy. Traveling to St. Louis is the 3rd. Seattle is 4th. Minnesota is 5th. Portland, Austin, San Jose. And then is that it's just in the Western Conference? I'm still trying to read this. Hold on one second. I'm gonna figure
San
this
Diego,
out eventually.
LAFC is not a long trip.
No, I was gonna say it's not, and so I sort of see that there. Vancouver, I don't know. See, it would seem to reason that the LA Galaxy are 9th and they travel 26,066 round trip miles, right? That's how that works. I'll look at it some more. But anyway, I thought the site was cool. I haven't got to really dig into it. I guess I thought it was really easy to look at, and I was like, oh, this is going to be really good. And it's got some nuance in it. So
I would think Vancouver, maybe Seattle, because they have to make at least 3 trips to Texas. Houston is down in the Gulf of America.
Well, I mean, in this, it is, if I'm reading this correctly, they have the Galaxy at 9th in this particular position, right? They're showing that Vancouver is the team that travels the furthest in the Western Conference.
I think that's accurate.
Yeah, and then Colorado Rapids apparently travel the least. So.
And then, because they're right in the middle, but all the Texas teams play each other, and they don't even have to travel. I mean, they probably bus to some of those games. I don't even know would you fly from Austin to Dallas? Maybe it's 2 hours.
It's one of
driving.
Southwest used to do it all the time, right? That was the triangle. It was Austin, Dallas, and what was it? Austin, Dallas, and there was one more. can't remember it. There was a triangle that Southwest was based off of.
Well, Dallas,
think
Austin. About it. Yeah. I would hope at some point someone would look at the expenses to hiring a charter to go from Austin to Dallas to fly. 45 minutes is a lot of money. You could bus in 2 hours. Is that an imposition on the players to sit in the bus for 2 hours? I don't know.
I bet you
the Galaxy. I would have to believe the Galaxy and LAFC are busing to San Diego. I can't imagine that they're going to make those guys go to the airport, climb aboard a plane, and then fly for 15 minutes.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. All right, so that's what we have on tap for the LA Galaxy, taking off and playing in Costa Rica outside of San Jose on Wednesday, March 5th, 2025. That game, 5:30 start time, and I believe the kickoff is going to be right around 5:37, but we'll have to double check that as that gets a little bit closer. The LA Galaxy then home this weekend once they get back on Sunday, March 9th. That's a 4 p.m. Start time and 4:10 p.m. kickoff time as they host St. Louis City. So we'll get you ready for all that and recap everything on Thursday. But an interesting time for the LA Galaxy. So many injuries. I wanted to show you the Alex Ruiz tweet here, basically listing them, and he missed one too. So Alex, I'll help. I didn't know you missed one whenever I capped this. Otherwise, I wouldn't have tried to shout you out. But Ricky Puz, Joseph Painsil, Mauricio Cuevas, Miki Yamane, Lucas Sanabria, Amiro Garcia, and Nascimento, right? So Mateos Nascimento are all on there. And
nobody on this chart, maybe Cuevas, right? We don't know about Yamani, but could be back like this month. Yeah, no one else on this list is expected back this month, the month of March.
Yeah, Yamane possibly, because they said that was one of those that it didn't seem like it was long term. So we're watching that. Cuevas could be one that I would hope would be, sooner rather than later, but I don't think we're going to see that. Garces, we don't know the extent of the injury. With Sanabria, Vanny said he believed it was a fracture. There has been no correcting on that, so I believe it is a fracture of the collarbone. So that's long-term type thing. Joseph Painsil, like you said, still I don't think we expect him back in March, but probably towards the end of it, we'll get a better idea of when he's coming back. And then Ricky Puz, I got asked on Vancouver radio before the game about Ricky Puz's status, and I'm like, Greg Vanny said we don't even want to talk about it yet because he's not anywhere near getting back yet, right? So, but we think August, September is still sort of that time frame that I think is realistic.
Where's a little chart on DP minutes?
Oh, I got it. Here you go. Designated player minutes through 2 games. The LA Galaxy have 100% of the minutes played from Gabriel Peck, 180 minutes, 90 times 2. So you get that. That means with no Joseph Painsil playing and no Ricky Puz playing, that means that the LA Galaxy have 33.3% of the total available minutes they played through the first 2 games. So
that is not good.
No, it's not. And again, we could go into what it looked like last year at 82.5%, and it's already at 33.3%. I expect that will get better when Joseph Painsil comes back. But even in a perfect world, the best you could do, Kevin, the absolute best you could get out of your designated players when you knew Ricky Puz was going to be gone for almost the entire season would have been 66% of the total minutes, right? You're not going to hit above 66. That's not happening. It doesn't matter how many minutes everybody plays. I don't see that coming back into it. So you went from 82% of the total minutes being played by designated players to, less than 66% of the total available minutes coming back.
And this is significant. This just occurred to me when you're looking at those minutes. This is where you're spending the most money. We've talked ad nauseum this winter about trying to get under the salary cap and how you spend your money and where the money's spent. 2 of your 3 DPs, that's where you put your best players. And that's, when you're building this team with salary caps, you had to get rid of a couple of players because Peck and Joveljic changed their status, when they aged out of their particular salary status categories. So now you have your 2 DPs can't play, and you're trying to fit things under the salary cap. I mean, it's kind of a double whammy. You had to move a lot of guys you didn't want to move to get under the salary cap, and then 2 of the guys you kept are hurt and can't play, and they're your most valuable, most expensive players. This is the predicament the Galaxy are in now. Have to sort of dig it out as the LA Galaxy go. LA Galaxy playing at Herediano coming up on Wednesday. So that's the game. On Thursday, we will have a recap of everything, get you ready for Sunday's game against St. Louis as well. So that's where the LA Galaxy stand. Kevin, any final thoughts on the game in Costa Rica? Is it that important? Is it if it gets thrown away, if the Galaxy lose 1-0, 2-0, that type of thing, is the CONCACAF Champions Cup run over? Well, they're going to come home, and then you never know what happens at home. As we know, until this this season, they played really well at home last year.
Yeah.
So even if they get an away goal, they can come back and fight to live another day. But again, it's. I guess my question wouldn't be don't try to win, because they're going to try to win. But if they don't win, it's the worst thing in the world, given all the injuries in the schedule.
No.
And that's a tough thing for Greg Vanney. He needs to try to win these games, and he's going to try to win these games. But if they don't, he's not going to be slitting his wrist by any stretch of the imagination, I don't think. By the way, have you ever been to Costa Rica?
I have not. I was hoping I would get to go this time, but with the Vancouver trip the way it is, I don't think it would have been an easy trip for me to try to make. No, so
I've been there 4 times. Really great place. Really super friendly people.
Awesome.
Good food. It's a really nice place to visit. Probably not a nice place for visiting soccer teams.
Right.
But other than that, it's a wonderful country.
I've certainly known friends that have gone on vacation there and said it's absolutely wonderful and gorgeous. So it's on my list. Hey, the Galaxy ever play there again? Just do some work, get some things done, and maybe next year the Galaxy and CONCACAF Champions Cup. Maybe we can go down to Costa Rica again. We can try it out for next year. So we'll see how all that turns out. But that's what we have. All right. Let's see. If you are looking for Mr. Kevin Baxter on all the socials,
would you?
Nobody knows, at KBaxter11, head on over to latimes.com. Kevin's doing a lot of good things with NASCAR, doing some spring training stuff as well. So if you see Kevin in Arizona, wave to him too. Tell him that you like him better whenever he does soccer, especially if he's covering the Dodgers or the Angels or something like that. You want to harass him a little bit. So latimes.com for all of his wonderful writings. That's where you can check Kevin out. If you're looking for me on any of the socials, it's at Galaxy Podcast. Cornerofthegalaxy.com is where you can head on over. And of course, you can go to YouTube, Spotify, Apple iTunes, all those fun places where you can see our podcast, like and subscribe. Tell your friends about it. All right, we'll be back on Thursday night. Recap this CONCACAF Champions Cup, and then, of course, look ahead to that St. Louis game coming up on Sunday. All right, for all of Mr. Kevin Baxter, I am Josh Pato Guesman. You've been listening. You've been watching to Corner of the Galaxy from the Box on cornerofthegalaxy.com. Have a great one, everybody.
You've been listening to the Corner of the Galaxy podcast on cornerofthegalaxy.com. You can follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at Galaxy Podcast. And be sure to check out and subscribe to iTunes, Stitcher, and Facebook by searching for Corner of the Galaxy. Fans, we thank you for listening. We ask that you be kind and courteous to your neighbors as you leave the podcast. We thank you for joining us and look forward to seeing you again. Until then, I'm Michael Araujo, and on behalf of the entire Corner of the Galaxy crew, goodbye.